And now for something completely different.
Humans do have an amazing capacity for believing what they choose.
I think before we go around killing people, we had better make that sure of our evidence.
They lied to you. It's time to learn the truth.
You can't handle the truth!
From what was once an inarticulate mass of lifeless tissues, may I now present a cultured, sophisticated man about town.
Welcome to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show.
What are you doing here, Tom?
Well, I was going to do a different beginning, and I ad-libbed. Can you believe that?
No.
Anyway, good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We're hoping to have an interesting show this evening. Well, I guess we could say that every time, couldn't we?
We're always interesting, Tom.
Yeah, we are the most. What's that? The guy for the beer commercial.
The most interesting man alive.
Yeah, that's him.
But we're both are. So,
yeah.
And we're both absolutely dreaming.
Oh, no. But he advertises
He's
for
Dos Equis.
Dos Equis. We're Lining Kugels. We're the Lining Kugels version of the Dos Equis guy.
So we're really not that interesting. You just blew our cover.
Sorry, man. I couldn't help it.
So yeah, we're gonna try to be interesting tonight.
Oh yeah.
Maybe make you laugh if we haven't already. A couple stooges that we are. I'm sorry, I'm the stooge.
No. Yeah, I wanted to say, for anyone who's listening that's new, the Annoying Peasant Radio Show is about the philosophy, the political philosophy of liberty. We're kind of a long-form conversation show. We're not like Bill O'Reilly, where it's like 4-minute segments and you hop along to the next thing. We just kind of feel like you can't do a subject justice. So we take our time to go through and do some analysis, and we hope that you can be patient enough to follow the analysis with us, and I guess get in the chat room if you get a chance. I'm not there monitoring it at the moment, but somebody might be there. Tanya might be in the chat room, and she can respond to you.
Yeah, we're not, we won't apologize for rambling, because we tend to just be kind of stream of consciousness, but we are very glad that you joined us. This is not something that we are expecting, nor would we want that you hear what we have to say about liberty and go, oh, well, I think those guys are dead on if you've never heard this subject matter before in this manner. But we hope that you'll hang with us, because we think that one of the problems with mainstream media and everything else is that it is so I'm going to show my age. It is so Reader's Digest about everything.
Everything's a soundbite.
Everything's a soundbite.
Not so on this show.
But we are going to play some soundbites.
Yeah, okay, so this show's a soundbite too.
We're playing the entire thing.
Yeah.
And so what's new in your life, Tom?
Not a whole lot.
See, the joke when I said, what are you doing here, Tom, is this is your house.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I do live here, don't I?
That's right.
Thanks. I forgot there for a minute.
That's right.
Nothing exciting in my life at the moment.
Oh, everything's exciting in your life.
Just working.
Yeah.
Just trying to stay above water. How about you?
Same deal.
Good for you.
Same deal.
That's also good.
Yeah. See, we are the most interesting men alive.
I haven't had a Dos Equis in weeks, so I have to let you know.
I know.
That.
See, that would so help us.
Dang it. Anybody got a Dos Equis? Send one over. FedEx. Anyway, you can also read us on our Facebook page.
You bet.
We'd like to converse with you there, and that's, of course, facebook.com/AnnoyingPeasantRadio, if I got that right.
Let's see, Tom, do you have a blog?
Yes. What is that? WordPress? No. Oh, geez. AnnoyingPeasantRadio.wordpress.com.
There you go.
Geez, I even know where it is. I haven't written one in a while now. I really almost did one today in preparation for this show.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see how far we get in tonight's show. I always like it when I send Tom something that he finds to be interesting, because then A, it shows that I've been listening to him. And,
What?
Yeah. And B, that maybe I've even learned something. Let's discard that.
Yeah. Wait, I've just seen. Oh yeah, this thing's actually working. It's actually working, I think. Maybe, I don't know. I was just checking this.
Are we hearing that it's not working?
No. Check. Oh yeah, we're working.
Oh.
That's what's good to know. I gotta check. This is what I do at the beginning of every show. I check my text. Oh, okay, nothing there. But one thing I have to share with you, I listened to a Tom Woods podcast.
Okay.
He has the Tom Woods Show. Tom Woods is I'm gonna get his title wrong. He's associated with the Mises Institute. I think he's a senior fellow.
Okay.
But I might not have his title right. He's just a really smart guy, and he's a very good orator. He actually.
So he talks good.
He done talks good. He had Ralph Nader on.
Interesting guy.
Yes, and you'd want to say from between Tom Woods, an anarcho-capitalist, and Ralph Nader, not really sure where to. I think at one time he described himself as a socialist.
He's been very outspoken for a long time.
And I think he ran for president on the Green Party maybe one time?
Yeah.
Independent a time or two or three, or I can't.
But was he not also a cabinet member at one point? I think he was, or he was a head of some administration.
I don't know, but his claim to fame was
he wasn't the most interesting man alive.
No, it doesn't drink Dos Equis.
Right.
The Carmen Ghia thing, I think, with GM.
Yep.
Was it GM? That was GM.
It'd be Corvair.
Corvair. That's right. That's who, right? Because it was. He claimed it was an unsafe car,
Yep.
and he testified in front of Congress and the whole
Yep.
deal. And I think either wrote a book about it or that was in one of his books. I can't remember. Anyway, that's his claim to fame. So Woods was trying to steer him a little bit, where the anarcho-capitalist libertarians and where the Ralph Nader consumer protection,
Yep.
I don't know how you describe.
That's what he was ahead of, the Consumer Protection Agency.
See, it all comes.
You give us time.
Exactly, we'll get there.
Like a blind squirrel.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, here it is. Anyway,
Get off of that landmine.
Quick. But so they were working on where they had common ground, and one of them was, of course, the warfare state. That Ralph Nader's not a big fan of the warfare state and the military-industrial complex. And I think Woods did a really good job of steering the conversation to where they had common ground. And he even went further and said, hey, how can these two groups, how can we collaborate better in the future, at least on the things that we have in common?
Mm-hmm.
Why not collaborate with what you have in common? So anyway, if you get a chance, not only that episode, I think all of Tom Woods' shows are fantastic. There's something to learn there. And he does more quick hitter shows, like 20 minutes, I believe, and the conversation's over and he's out.
Okay.
So his format is slightly different, and I think that's something always to analyze. I think it's hard to hold an audience for.
So he could be like a commuter format, and we're more like a road trip.
That's we are.
Yeah.
So grab your peanuts and licorice and a soda,
right,
and sit back and relax, or if you'd prefer an adult beverage,
right.
But not a Dos Equis.
Right.
Anyway, what were we?
Do you want to make a comment about the warfare state and all the Cold War crap that's going on, Tom?
Yeah, the only thing that I can really relate to that I did listen to a little Rush Limbaugh today.
Look out! Why'd you give that up?
Yeah, I was in the car. Actually, I like listening to him because I like to see where, in my view, he goes wrong. In other words, where he goes wrong, in my view, is wherever he diverges from liberty. Mm-hmm. In other words, where he supports tyranny. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of whoa. Right. And sometimes, like you said, I think it's like a blind squirrel. Sometimes he's on the side of freedom. I don't know how. I get it. He's conservative, Republican, and I think sometimes they're in support of freedom, and sometimes they're not.
See, I just read that one of my Facebook acquaintances, actually somebody I grew up with,
yes,
is going Glenn Glenn Beck has a road show. Did you know that?
Yes.
We will not conform or some darn thing.
Okay.
Whatever. It's like, we should have a road show, Tom.
We should.
We could go to like convenience stores.
And the only people who would be in attendance would be those who were picking up some convenience foods.
Right. So hold their cigarettes and their beer hostage.
Here, I got change for you, sir. I don't know.
But I think it's interesting. I think it's very telling of the political landscape that there is or is not these days. I just take it as an observation.
Yeah, I think there's generally two camps. There's a camp that follows a popular political ideology, basically Republicans. I don't know if you want to call them all conservatives. I don't, whatever makes them happy.
Whichever flavor.
Democrats, which are seen to be more liberal, which by the modern use of the word, not the classical use of the word.
Yep.
And then there's the third group. I think is just basically I ought to be king and it should be my way. You know, and whatever I think is.
But there's some of those people on either side of the other groups too.
Absolutely,
actually they all want to be king.
Absolutely,
that's where we come in.
Yes, that's where we come in because we
don't
want to
wanna
be
be
the
kings.
queen.
Yeah.
No.
But we think we should all be kings.
Yeah, everybody does, and I actually think you should be king, but you should be king of your own kingdom,
Right.
not of including other people.
Thank you. Perfect.
That's the difference. I think the big groups, and there's more to be sure than the two, but the two main ones, Democrat, Republican, they think they understand how things should be. Okay, and that's fine. Everybody can decide how you think things should be, but they also want to use aggressive force to make you to conform to what their thoughts are.
Right. They think that everybody should be as
Yes.
they think you should be.
Right. They should make the rules, the law, and you follow them. That's the arrangement.
Right.
And I call that simply the rulers and the ruled.
Okay.
You know, we talk about the two-party system. Yuri Maltsev, remember when
Sure.
he says we have a two-party system. One's stupid and the other's evil. So bipartisanship is therefore both stupid and evil. Well, I argue, of course, that's true and humorous. But there's the other way of parsing the two-party system is we have the rulers and the ruled. And I still think the two-party system, if you divide it that way, is wrong.
Sure.
I don't understand why anybody should have an overlord.
So what I read on the Glenn Beck roadshow thing I think he's got two other people that they're rallying purposes to take back control of schools.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay, so with that, I'm gonna do a tease for what we're gonna talk about this whole show.
Yes.
But there's the hypocrisy, if you ask me.
Yes.
Is they're wanting to take control back of schools, but only the way that they think that schools should be.
Of course, that's because public schools, anything public, more or less for that matter, is one shoe size fits all.
Right.
Right? And it's a crazy notion. If you want to go to school and you're into ballet and dance, I don't understand why you couldn't go to a school that maybe does a little less math, science, whatever, no auto mechanic shop class, and you're going to do ballet and dance. I don't understand what's even wrong with that.
Right.
Right? And the problem is now I got to go to the school board and I say, hey, you guys should focus more on the arts and the visual arts and the performing arts.
Right. Everybody should be in ballet.
Right. And then the next parent goes up, no, to prepare our kids for the 21st century and beyond, we got to teach them more math and science.
Right.
And then the next parent goes up there and says, no, we have to concentrate on physical education because if your body isn't sound, you can't have a sound mind. So here we go. We're supposed to do everything. Of course, we have somewhat limited resources. We can't do that. So here's what it's going to be.
Including the amount of time in the day.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the number of days.
Right.
Right. It's finite. So how do you create some kind of, even if you're a real good bureaucrat in the school system, you're trying to create some kind of compromise, say, okay, we'll do this much math and science, this much performing arts, and this much phy-ed stuff, which might not really make anyone overly happy. So why can't you go to a specialized school of your choosing? And why can't you pay for it? And people say, well, because I can't afford it. Well, part of the reason you can't afford it now is because you're paying property tax to pay for the public school. And if you opt to go to a private school, you still have to pay the public school. You still have to pay your property tax, even if you have sons and daughters that aren't in attendance. What if the situation was reversed? What if a private school said, you must pay us, and if you don't attend, you still have to pay us? People would have a cow. Right? That's absurd, right?
Right.
But when it comes to public education, no, that's just normal.
And further, then the state says, okay, the school board doesn't matter. The state says, no, you've got to, if you're going to get our state money,
yes,
then you got to do these things too.
Yeah, and you got to...
Because these people down here got their way with us in the state house.
Yes.
And no, you have to have ballet, even though you're in a farm area.
Right, and everybody's in wheelchairs.
Facetiously. Right, exactly.
It doesn't matter. If you want the state money, that's what you have to do.
Right. So here's my digression.
Okay.
So, we went to the big county fair Sunday night.
Oh.
Met some friends and their kids, and we went to, guess what we went to see? Sunday night, the last day of the fair, what happens?
I don't know. Fireworks.
Demolition Derby, baby.
Oh, sweet, yeah.
It was awesome. Okay, we got a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they were jumping up and down. It was a great time. And I was jumping up and down first because it was really cool, bunch of destruction and nonsense.
Right.
So as I'm walking out of the fair after all the demolition and all the carnage, I go by the gate, and there sits our county, has a little setup there, all the emergency stuff and whatever. What's included in the emergency stuff? Probably a $200,000 mobile home.
Oh, there you go.
That is the crisis management headquarters with I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars of equipment.
Right.
Did I vote for that?
Apparently you did. Case closed.
Apparently. Exactly. Does my county really need that? Now, I'm not saying I want my county to be unprepared, but, I don't know how many's in our county, but not a very big populated county. I'm not sure that's not a little bit overboard.
And that's the problem.
And I'm not saying it's not saying it's a county's fault because maybe the state said, hey, if you're going to be a county, you got to buy one of these damn things.
I was going to say it was probably state money, and they made them buy it. And
maybe so.
We don't know what to do with this.
Right.
But that's the absurdity that happens. And I'm not saying that private enterprise, private corporations, publicly held corporations, that one disturbs me to even say that, but that's another topic, that they don't waste money. It happens.
Yep.
I'm not saying so. But the thing is, as Walter Block has said on many videos, I was watching a number of his this week too, is here's the difference between, in this regard, between the state, or a lot of people like to call it the government, and private enterprise. When government does it wrong, when they're wasteful, if they make an error, right, all these possibilities, basically, not only does nothing happen to them, they run short on funds as a result. Let's say they were wasteful. So what do? They have to increase the levy and say, we have to have more money. Okay? So if they screw up, they get more money. Private enterprise, if they screw up, they go out of business and they no longer can function. In other words, they can't screw up again.
Right.
Okay? If they screw up big enough. All right?
Right.
If they screw up and waste a half a cent, likely not much significant happens to them.
Right.
But if they do it significantly, they're out of business, and that management team and those workers are out.
Yep.
In other words, they can't screw up again. The government can continue, and the more they screw up, the more money they get. Perverse incentives. That was for Tanya, by the way.
There you go. We should get a bell. Ding.
Ding. Well, we have, the sound effects, but I just don't have them all loaded. Anyway.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not for preparedness. I'm not for callousness as far as public safety or an individual's health or what have you. It just, as I looked around from the fairgrounds, I was like, wow, every one of those vehicles that those guys are bouncing around on at the county fair, pretty darn nice new vehicles.
Sweet.
Yeah. And I'm like, I wonder.
And you paid for them.
Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's okay. That's fine. But then I get to the urban assault vehicle, and I'm like, wow, look at that sucker. I wonder, maybe, and here's my other problem, maybe I can go back in my county's records and see when that was, paid for and how much it cost.
just want to back up a second because I think you raised something that's extremely important. When people hear me or libertarians speak out against public education, they immediately assume we're against education. Right? When you say, well, you have a problem with potentially...
Just like they could be criticizing me for, wow, this guy's just crazy because he doesn't want us to be safe.
Exactly. Just because you're against the public use of funds for some of these items, or all of them, right, doesn't mean you're, well, I'm not for safety. I don't want people to be safe.
Right.
I want them to be killed and
Everybody
maimed.
Drive on the wrong side of the road. Let's see what happens.
Right.
Like the demolition of you guys.
Exactly. Well, that's why you went.
See the tie-in? See what a pro I am?
It all comes in a big loop. But that's an interesting point, that people do tend to jump to that conclusion.
And if you take, we're going to go back again, to just that soundbite, that you're, about education, you're being critical of that, then people go, wow, these guys are nuts. But that's not what we're saying.
Well, I'm kind of nuts. So
we are nuts.
And I'm okay with that. But
not that part.
There was I don't remember where it was. I commented on a Facebook thing. I very rarely do that. There was some actor, and the younger kids would know this actor. He was a younger guy.
Sure.
Some younger person's show. I don't even know. I can't remember the name of the show. But he just spoke out about public education, and he said he was okay spending money for public education because he didn't want to live in a society of basically morons. I'm of course oversimplifying what he said, but that's basically what he said.
He's probably talking about us.
Yeah, I am a product of public education, by the way. Anyway, I had to chime in. I said, that's great. I mean, I love the idea that people would like people to be better educated. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
In fact, you'd be quite the contrary. You would be absolutely for additional education.
Absolutely.
If an individual so chose.
Yes, and in education, by the way, my definition isn't as narrow, I think, as most people jump to. Not necessarily. I'm saying the classroom can be a wonderful place.
Yep.
If depending on what you're trying to learn.
Right.
But if you're trying to learn how to fix a car, classroom is probably a smaller portion of your education, right? Then you get that education some other way. But the point is, learn a trade, learn how to create wealth, essentially, right? Learn how to be constructive. That's, to me, what education is broadly, and it encompasses a lot of things. Anyway, so I commented on there. That's great, but and you want to live in a society of more educated people, and you're okay funding it, but that's actually not what you're doing. You're saying other people must also fund this, right? When you do it through legislation.
Right.
I mean, go ahead, talk to people, advocate anything you want. That's perfectly fine.
But if I don't fund it, they're going to take my house.
Exactly. Therein lies the problem. And so I suggested to them make a healthy donation to a private institution to help enrich their endowment so they can grant more scholarships. Or I don't know how it all works exactly. Right. But to me, that's the way that's consistent with freedom versus being tyrannical and saying, here, I want a more educated society, so you pay for it.
Right.
That's what he's ultimately saying.
Sure.
And he doesn't likely know that he's actually saying that. And I think that's where this show comes in. I think we can help people if you'll be a little calm and reasonable and let the logic roll around a little bit. You go, the whole idea of freedom is no one tells you or mandates to you what you need to do. This is what you must do
and
or
what
else.
you can't do.
Right.
Per se.
Exactly. Leonard Reed was the best at saying it. Anything peaceful.
Yes.
Right? But
always conditions to that. But yes, anything peaceful.
But go with, you just have to pay for it.
And we're advocating a peaceful way of going about this.
Absolutely.
To change and peaceful dialogue to do so.
Yes. And by the way, the tool is education.
Yes.
That's what we're doing here.
Right.
So it would be kind of absurd for me to say, yes, I'm against public education. That means I'm against education while I'm on the radio trying to explain things and educate people.
Or encourage them to educate themselves.
Yes. It seems crazy that that's where my position would be. But I'm just trying to bolster the idea that just because one is opposed to public education, in fact, does not mean that you're opposed to education.
For sure.
Okay.
I think it's good that we talked about what the show's about. We're getting ready to be down in August.
Bingo, that's right where I wanted to go.
Where are we going to go, Tom?
We're going to AgriFest.
We are. And where is that?
I think it's technically
It's somewhere in Minnesota.
like Frontiac or something like
Right.
that. We got to get hooked up here with Nick and get all the details so we
We
don't
will.
supply erroneous information.
It's not like we're going tomorrow. It's
Right.
it's like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, 22nd through 24th of August.
Yep.
But we're going to be there. We're going to be broadcasting live. We don't have it all ironed out, how long, what hours, all this stuff. But we're looking forward to some fun and a lively group, some great conversations, some interesting
You
topics.
want to talk about what Agora Fest is? Agora Nights? Agora people?
Agorism.
Agorism.
Agorism is basically, if I have it right, which I may get
Take
corrected.
a run at it.
Yeah, I'll take one. Snap.
Yeah.
It's basically figuring out how to live your life essentially separate from the state. In other words, trying to live free in an unfree world.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting that these guys are trying to figure this out and promote these ideas. And I have my own theory how the state ends anyway. People, alluding to what you had said, we're seeking only peaceful means here. Most people think if you stand opposed to the state, it's like, all right, we got to start shooting people.
Right. We've got ammunition in a bunker.
Right. Who are we going to kill?
Right.
Maybe it doesn't matter. Let's just start killing.
Right.
That's would be we'd be diametrically opposed to that.
Mhm.
Not only that, let's just assume for a minute a bunch of, we'll call them freedom fighters. And let's say they really are freedom fighters. If they were to manage to take down the state by force, that actually by definition would be a coup d'etat, which essentially that's the centralization of force in order to take over a centralized agency of force.
Hypocrisy.
Yes, and so the point is it couldn't possibly even work. Even if you had enough guns and you had the strategy and the tactics and all the crap that it would take, I would argue by definition you would just replace one state with the next. In other words, that's not possible, or not possibly the way the state could even die to gain freedom. Of course, this current regime could die that way, and you could have a new regime. But the point is, state for state, who cares?
Right.
In my view, we're right back to where we started. There's no point. So the only way the state ultimately dies is, it's not that I think 99% of the world is going to get educated and completely on board with liberty and say, yep, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to purposefully work my life to be this way. I don't think they're all going to be agorists, 99% of the population or 100%. I don't think that will ever happen. But what will happen is economic opportunities will come forward that, I don't know how to explain that a little, that diverge away from the state, that the state is not able to figure out quickly enough how to regulate it, how to tax it, how to be in control of it ultimately. So essentially that business, that industry is now running separate to the state. And as long as there's economic opportunity, people will join that, and there'll be, again, not just one industry. I think numerous industries this will happen, and eventually the state will become obsolete because it can't keep up. That's how I see it possibly happening.
It's not known, but
Absolutely not known.
But the key points are here: peaceful.
Absolutely, that's numero uno.
Yep.
Key point. And number two, it has to be education.
Right.
We have to be able to think about this, because the more people who are on board with liberty and who can help spread the message of liberty, of course, the better off we all are.
Yep.
A freer world is better than an unfree world.
Okay.
With that, again, Agora Fest. Look
Yep.
for us. We'll be chatting about that in upcoming shows. But that's August 22nd to 24th. So if you obviously can't be there or don't want to show up, you could always listen to us on some extra hours, broadcast hours.
Perfect. We look forward to it, and we
Yeah.
are appreciative of the invite.
Yes. We also
Sure. Thanks, Nick.
Yes. And we also have to say one more thing. We closed out last week's show. Was that last week's show, right? With River Jordan, that
Yep.
song?
Yes.
We have to, I can't tell you, if you like that song, we're going to close out tonight with the same song. I think it's either Adler or Alder. I can't remember. I was looking to find it to confirm it, and I couldn't. But also, I could not find where you can find an MP3 of that song. So for the moment, we can't give you that information. But
we're going to try.
Yeah, when we get the information, we will pass it along to you.
Okay.
We just want to do that.
So let's get to our main subject, if we could.
Yeah, let's get to the show.
But as always, we encourage and are hoping that we provoke you to think. And amen if you want to disagree with us, but we just want you to think. Maybe we will serve as many things have served in my life to go, wow, that's not what I believe. And maybe we'll help you realize why you believe or how strongly you believe or whatever, but we sure hope that we make you think. In the end, we might make you laugh and make you think a little bit, and certainly this piece that we sent, it's a very mainstream piece. It's
Absolutely.
It's a guy that I have a lot of respect for. It's Jon Stewart and The Daily Show. And I found this the other day. I followed him on Facebook, and I think he's actually quite funny. And the generation beneath us, I hear, is this is almost their mainstream news outlet.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I can blame them.
Yeah, in a sense, there's nothing wrong with getting your news and having a laugh in the process.
Exactly.
I mean, that'd be good.
And I like, personally, I don't always agree with them. Like, I don't always agree with everybody all the time, but he always makes me think, and he always makes me laugh, and it always puts it in a context. I think he does such a good job of pointing out some of the absurdities.
Yes.
And clearly, I think he did this really well here. So I saw this piece several days ago. I sent to Tom, like, you got to see this because it talks about liberty, and hopefully we're going to punctuate the points in which it most, I think, is telling of liberty or where we are not free or where things are not equal in some recent Supreme Court rulings. And so this article or the
interview.
Who's being interviewed? It's Dahlia
Lithwick.
And this is off of an article that she wrote on Slate.
Yep.
Entitled "For Men, this Supreme Court term was uncontroversial. For women, it was a disaster." And I'm not taking, and I don't think you are either, Tom, taking necessarily sides of agreeing with her or disagreeing with her in her summarization of these rulings. It's more as to the system that is in place that makes these rulings. Is that one of your takeaways?
Yeah, that's definitely one of my takeaways. And again, I try not to make a habit of agreeing or disagreeing with people or their opinions or their ideas. I'm a simpleton. It's just liberty and tyranny, right? And that's that's my analysis tool. And again, I'm just a supporter of freedom, and I'm not a supporter of tyranny. And that's how I look at all these discussions. In this case, that we're going to review here in just a second, is whether it's Dahlia talking or Jon Stewart talking, I'm thinking, okay, what they're saying, is this consistent with liberty or is it not? And then, based on that answer, is whether I essentially agree with them or disagree with them.
Right.
So
one of the takeaways for me, and I'm not sure I articulated it very well, is there's tremendous inconsistency in how they do this, and that's the one thing that you so preach, as you just did, is the consistency of freedom, the consistency of self-ownership, the consistency of liberty.
Yes, that's one thing I just got to add before we do this. If you are a Republican, if you identify yourself as a Democrat, in that ideology, there's inconsistencies. So and you say, well, nobody's perfect. That's the short answer to that.
But it's better than the other guys.
It's better than the other guys, right? That would also be one of the answers.
Yep.
But think about this. The inconsistency thing has to be a problem at some point. Because you have to say, well, if I'm advocating to go this way, and sometimes I advocate to go the other way, well, it's counterproductive, right? So I have to figure out which direction I'm going and try as best I can. And when somebody points out inconsistencies, I have to stop and think about that. Okay, do I agree that this, in fact, is an inconsistency? And if I do, the next is, how do I remedy that? I got to get rid of that position. I have to change that position so I can be um, conserving my energy and advocating essentially one thing. So now the question is, what's that thing you advocate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and again, we're back to where we've already been. I am attempting, as best I can, is to advocate for freedom and to do it consistently. So with that, I don't know if you...
Nope, let's go. What's the date of this show? Do we know?
I don't have it.
If somebody wanted to go watch this entire thing, we'll try to post it to the Facebook page.
Yes, we'll do that.
In fact, I'll try and do it while we listen.
Okay.
And we'll get started with it, and then we're gonna play some sound bites from it, right?
Yes.
And we're gonna stop at some different places and interject some commentary.
Yes. The whole thing is 16 minutes. We're not playing the whole thing, but we're probably got, I don't know, about 8 minutes worth. But this first chunk is only about 25 seconds. Actually, it says it's seeking right now, so we'll see if this actually works. So here we go. This is about 25 seconds. This is Jon Stewart with Dahlia Lithwick of Slate.com. She's the Supreme Court reporter.
Yes.
Here we go. Hopefully.
Tonight, she is the Supreme Court correspondent for Slate. Please welcome to the program, Dahlia Lithwick. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Dahlia, you've got to be, the Supreme Court, they always do this. They sit, you don't hear anything for 6 months, 7 months, and then in a 2-week period in the middle of summer, there's so much to talk about. I just want to dive right in. A lot of relatively controversial decisions, almost entirely restrictive for women.
Right.
Men, I think we got through this Supreme Court term, I think, quite well.
Well, yeah, unless you want to have sex with a woman. I think if, you are interested in, sorry.
Okay. All right. If I remember right, because I'm actually not listening to it at the moment, she ended with...
Unless you want to have sex with a woman.
Yeah. That the point was, I think, that they were making that men fared better in these latest round of decisions from the Supreme Court than women did.
Yep.
And first of all, my reaction, I don't know, your thoughts. I'll let you go first.
There's a lot of different ways to go. I think what you taught me about liberty is I think that the basis of this entire conversation we're going to have tonight is why does somebody have to choose for you?
Yes, essentially, when they framed this as men fared better than women, they created two opposing groups. Right. Now, there's more to it than just simply, it's men against women.
Mm-hmm.
I think because the little bit broader issue is later it's going to come out more in this conversation. It's the men of the Supreme Court versus the women on the Supreme Court, right? And that's where in a number of these cases the line kind of went men versus women, and I think that's why they're also alluding to the effect of the rulings, men versus women. But I think it's a dangerous way to do this is frame it up men versus women. Again, for me, the two opposing ideologies or ideas is freedom, tyranny. I don't really care what sex you are. I don't care what race you are. None of that matters. It's just freedom versus tyranny. And of course, way they set it up already was men versus women. So
right.
I'm already like, I can't make any big conclusion, but I'm like, why?
Well, and in our pre-show discussion, Tom and I agreed that our perspectives on this are actually quite different. There's a lot of overlap, but they're very different in what I hear and what Tom hears. So I agree with what you're saying very much. The stage is set now for really the basis of the entire discussion, and that's what applies to one may not be as fair as what applies to another. And that's a fundamental conflict of liberty.
Absolutely. Let's move on.
Okay.
This next chunk should be about 2 minutes. Just over 2 minutes and 4 seconds. So here we go.
Terrible for women.
Terrible. But the first one was very surprising to me, which was the buffer zone around women's health clinics.
Right.
Where people might be coming in for abortion services. There used to be a 35-foot buffer zone. This down, the basis being oh, it's a infringement on free speech to have to yell.
So this was a case where you have the perfect plaintiffs, John, because it's these sweet old women. They're not even protesters in the court's view. They're sidewalk counselors. And the court really kind of stipulates that this would be a different case if there were people who protested as
or
people went into or yelled things. But this isn't that case. This is people who really have a calling to convince women walking into clinics that what they're doing is wrong. Massachusetts, in the wake of some horrific shootings in clinics in the 1990s, said we need a 35-foot buffer so that women can enter and exit safely.
Right.
And the court unanimously, by the way, 9-0, strikes it down and says exactly what you say, that the speech rights of these sidewalk counselors really trump the rights of these women who just want to seek health.
What is the buffer zone at the Supreme Court? What is their... How much of a... What do they got there? What do they got? I guess nothing?
I've heard... Oh,
they got
there's
one?
a buffer.
So when the Supreme Court walks in, before they obviously get in their show clothes, how close can the court counselors be to them?
The gentle sidewalk.
The gentle sidewalk court
with their
counselors.
pokey signs. Yeah.
Right.
No, I've heard variously 100 feet, 150 feet, but the plaza outside the court is an absolute no protest zone.
Right. Why is that, and how do they justify the difference?
Well, sadly for us, they don't mention in the opinion why.
Oh, really?
Some people have rights of access to folks they disagree with, and other people don't. But I think.
Okay. Hopefully you're back with us. Your thoughts? Any thoughts on that segment? There's a couple things that jumped out at me, so I want to.
Certainly, how do I want to say this? Privilege. Like that?
That's a great word, and the reason that for me, my impression is a great word is because that's the nature of the state. The nature of the state is.
It isn't hip hop. It isn't heavy metal. It is definitely not techno. So why is Maker's Mark a hit with so many people? Maybe it's because even though we've never been cool, we've always been us.
Oh, I did stop it.
Okay.
Right. The nature of the state is it plays favoritism. Right. If you want a public school, and it's compulsory to pay for it, everybody's going to pay for it, but only the children get to go. Only the children and or their parents gain the benefit, right? You can make the argument, no, we can all benefit because we benefit from a more educated society.
You can broaden that to a lot of different ways.
Right? But if you have a right to an education, that's one thing I wanted to talk about because he mentioned rights here at the end. There is no such thing as a right that obligates another to do something else. In other words, I've heard a lot of people say, I have the right to health care. Well, if you actually had the right to health care, in this case, if you do, someone else has to pay for it, right? Therefore, it can't be a right. In other words, because if someone else has to pay for what I want, what I'm getting, isn't that by definition, if they're forced to do that, that's slavery, right? Now, I know people don't object to it if I'm on the master end. If I'm on the slave end, then they tend to have a bigger problem with it, right? But as long as I'm getting the benefit, I don't really care too much about slavery, right? But if you could stop and think about it, this is what people don't understand when they advocate for the state. Many of them, my good friends, that they're actually advocating to steal from me, right? And they say, well, of course I don't do that. And I'm like, yes, you actually do. You don't do it directly. You do use the long arm of the law to do it, right? And that's the thing about rights. And I didn't actually hear this segment. I was just going from memory. But when Stewart was talking about rights, that's one of the things that strikes me about that word is so misused in my view. That, I have a right to this, I have a right to that. Right. Actually, you don't have such a right. Now, I have to put a caveat in there. The state, any law that the state creates is actually called a positive right, and they could have concocted such a thing. So in the context of the state, you now have this right. but it's not a real right. It's just made up by a group of guys in a big white building in Washington, D.C. And if they make up another rule, another right, you get that one too, or you get one taken away from you. It's not real, is the point. It's just fabricated. Versus natural rights are inherent in you being a person, your ability to reason. It's a whole long argument there. But the only thing that could happen to you if with your natural rights is someone could take them away, some agency usually it is. In this case, we call it the United States government, the state government, a county government, a city government. They could take them away from you, but they can't actually enhance them. And they can also grant you additional rights that aren't real rights because they just made them up and gave you something, which is partly what they're talking about here. I wanted to, the one thing I did want to also bring up that Jon Stewart brought up, he brings up the hypocrisy and absurdity of things. If I remember right, in that segment, they were talking about the buffer zone.
Right.
And the deal was, I can't remember. It went down for these women's health clinics. It went from like 35 feet to 8 or 5 or something.
Right.
Is the buffer zone?
Yes.
And then Stewart asked, well, what's the buffer zone for the Supreme Court?
Exactly.
And that's that's one where I would argue he's on the right side of thinking about this.
Absolutely.
Well, wait a minute. Why do these
How can these guys dictate theirs?
Yes.
And
they don't have to
more
live
or less than theirs.
Yeah, they don't have to live by the same rules.
And he says that the Supreme Court has a quote no protest zone.
Yeah, I like that.
So they don't have to hear it. But what they've just mandated that these other people have to hear it.
Exactly. See, and this is the problem of the rulers and the ruled, right? The rulers don't live by the same rules as the ruled. That's why you want to be a ruler, because you don't have to live by the rules that you make.
Okay. If I could challenge everybody that's listening, if you just hear that one thing that Tom just said, it's inconsistent.
Yeah, inconsistent is a great way to put it. And you know, it's in this case, it's somewhat funny. I mean, that's why it makes a good Jon Stewart, The Daily Show.
It's great.
Yeah, because you have to see the absurdity of this stuff. Now, I got a little problem here. I don't know if I can get rid of these commercials because I think they got it rigged where you got to go through.
Probably have to.
Because I moved their timeline beyond, and it hit a marker, and it goes to commercials. So we're gonna try to rip through these commercials. It'll probably take a minute.
We're gonna enjoy the commercial.
I don't even know what they're for.
Hopefully, it's
A full-body whiskey that's remarkably easy to drink. Just call us the Unplugged Bourbon. To quote our founder, it is what it isn't.
You think you take off all your makeup before bed, but do you really? Neutrogena Makeup Remover erases 99% of your most stubborn makeup with one towelette. Can your makeup remover do that? Neutrogena Makeup Remover.
This is Macaroni Grill's head chef. This is his sister in Italy. She's a rival chef who dared him to take chicken parmesan and make it a meatball. New rustic kitchen meatballs. Classic Italian flavors rolled into meatballs and served over imported Italian spaghetti.
Don't tell my bosses I just said that. But I think that...
Okay, here's our next segment. It's about 2.5 minutes.
Here we go.
Let's talk about the others, because it does seem like women in particular, their circumstance, everybody else's rights in these decisions trump the rights of women for some reason, as though the court is saying to women, you know, in the case of an abortion clinic, yeah, you haven't been talked to properly about it. In the case of contraception, you shouldn't be able to have that and have them pay for it. It's almost chastising them behaviorally.
This has been making me crazy, this term, because I've been a Supreme Court reporter for, I think, 14 years, and this is the first one that I'm like, and I have ovaries. Like, I'm really upset about this.
Okay. All right. So it wasn't 2 minutes. That was like a guy's 2 minutes.
Yeah, that was a guy's 2 minutes. What were they talking about there? If I remember right, they were emphasizing that women lost in these cases.
Right.
And again, it just reinforcing what we.
Why should one side win or lose?
You're right, and that's the problem when you use political means to get something. Someone gets something, others have to lose something.
But conversely, if you are anti-abortion,
yes,
you're reveling at this, or you're very pleased with this particular part of the judgment.
No doubt that many of those people are. I would argue they're reveling in the wrong thing. They're reveling in the fact that they can use the long arm of the law to use force to get their way. Right? There's the inconsistency there. The deal where I want to be king and I want to force you to be part of my kingdom. And they don't see that. They just see this as an issue of right versus wrong. They think, hey, we're right, they're wrong, so we're going to make them do the right thing.
Or we won or we lost.
Exactly.
And I think one of the things I've learned about liberty is, in its truest sense, everybody wins.
Exactly. That's
you get to choose you.
The difference between a coerced exchange, I'll use this hopefully a reasonable analogy. The difference between a coerced exchange and a voluntary exchange there's a number of things, of course, but primarily in a coerced exchange, I hold a gun to Brad's head and make him give me something, the pen. I say, give me the pen or your life. You wind up handing over the pen. What happens? I, of course, gained the pen, so my wealth increased. But in order for that to happen, your wealth had to decrease, right? In other words, it's a win-lose deal. Now, if it was a deal where I said, hey, I really like that pen, I'll give you $2 for it, and you say, no way, it's at least a $5 pen. So I wind up, you say, we get to $6, and I say, all right, $6, I'll do it. I give you the $6, you give me the pen. The reason that exchange happened is because if you switch to my seat for a second, I think I'm better off with a pen rather than my $6. And conversely, you think you're better off with $6 rather than the pen. Of course, you wouldn't have done that exchange if you didn't think you were better off than before. And right. I also wouldn't have done the exchange if I didn't think I was better off than I was prior to the exchange.
Right.
So the point is, we both win on a voluntary exchange. That's not the case with a coerced exchange.
And it sounds like we're crazy because we're comparing a pen and an exchange to abortion.
Right.
Which is devoutly important to a lot of people's, much more so than a pen. And we're not really belittling the abortion decision.
Right.
But we're just saying,
using coercion forces somebody to lose.
Right.
That's the wrong thing. The tool you're using to get there is not the way to do it. I would argue, get yourself a radio show, educate and persuade people. That's the way to change things. It's not to use force.
And before this particular ruling, were you happy that they couldn't yell at people going into abortion clinics to further educate them? Which is really what she's saying, why they changed that dimension.
Right.
So didn't you feel, and so now you go, wow, that was really against us, but oh wait, now we got our way.
Right. And most people don't care how they got their way as long as they got their way.
But what if it's not my way?
Exactly. There's the rub.
Okay.
All right. Now we're going from 8 minutes to like 12:25. So we're going to be hanging in here for about 4.5 minutes.
Okay.
And we should not run up against another ad. So we should be good.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Overeat. But what's really troubling is this is the first term where I really feel like you read these splits, these gender splits, these religion splits.
Right.
And the court is kind of, the fractures on the court are really exposed. And I think it's not an accident, John, that in the span of a week, we get Ginsburg dissenting in the Hobby Lobby case. We get Sotomayor dissenting in that Wheaton order saying, y'all just fooled us. And
that was a sneaky move. For those who don't know, they did this very narrow ruling for Hobby Lobby saying this only applies to a very narrow, closely held corporation, just these 4 things. And then this other group sued that they don't have to fill out the paperwork to have the burden of the finance for contraception shifted to the state for religious purposes, and they got to stay on filling out paperwork.
Right. And this is, I mean, technically, so all of these conscience exemptions, they don't apply to any churches. So that's the first thing. This applies only to the not-for-profits or now the for-profits. So the difference between Wheaton and Hobby Lobby was Wheaton was a not-for-profit, right? It's a college. And so there's a slightly different analysis that the court does that they didn't do in Hobby Lobby. But you're exactly right that if the takeaway from Hobby Lobby was that 5 justices said, you know what, there's an easier way to do this than to force Hobby Lobby to provide contraception. And that easier way is this form, and then 3 days later they're like, oh, form, that's not going to work either. And I described it somewhere as like they gave you a loaner and then it broke down a block after you got off the lot. You know, they're like, the form doesn't work either.
But what I don't understand is, okay, so the idea is they object to having to pay for contraception in the health programs. Although, to be fair, before Obamacare, apparently Hobby Lobby's health plan did cover that. And they just decided after Obamacare that they were against it.
Right, that's right. Until Obamacare came, they covered the, quote, abortifacients that they now object to.
Right.
And the other thing that's so important about this case, John, is that these are only 4 things of the 20 that Obamacare says that you have to now provide. These are only 4, and it's sort of easy to say, oh, well, you know, there's always condoms. There's always something else. But there are cases coming down the pike of employers who object to all 20.
Right.
So this case, and you know, I think as you said in your lead up, there's no limiting principle other than trust us. We're not going to be crazy.
Once you give somebody a right, if you say to them, you have a right to conscientiously object, which, by the way, fine. I don't take that right away from a person who conscientiously objects to it. I don't understand why that right trumps your employee's right. But once you give them a right, how do you not expand it? How do you say, it is your right, but only in this very narrow... It seems to me that they absolutely will have to expand this.
Well, so there's 2 things that I think that are very scary that are going to come of this. One is, and you alluded to it, the court says, oh, well, there is a compelling interest, right? That's what the test requires, in getting contraception to women. And we're going to kind of concede that for purpose of argument, but nowhere are we going to acknowledge it. The word women appears, I think, 13 times in the entirety of the majority.
And always in quotes, women.
Women, them women.
It's always, Alito will make an argument at the end of it, he'll just go, women.
With their ovaries,
yeah.
Right. No, and so I think that one possibility is that this is just seen as an unserious medical problem, and it's somewhere in the opinion they're saying, this would be different if it was vaccinations, you know, real compelling health interest. And for women who die,
right.
Because they can't get access to contraception, it's not different.
Right.
The other thing that's really scary is if the court concedes, as you said, that we're not going to scrutinize how deeply held their beliefs are. We're not going to scrutinize
or if their
science.
Beliefs are true.
Right. We're looking at none of that. That's improper.
Right.
Then that either means that Hobby Lobby is special, or it means that when the Wiccan employer comes along, we're going to concede to them too. And so the real fear for me undergirding this case is that either women are unspecial for their medical health needs, or that, you know, evangelical Christian employers are extra special. And I think there's no way to flatten that playing field so that everyone gets treated the same.
You think making it big is easy? If it was, I would have played it safe and kept my day job.
I got something. You need a baby heel.
I think you don't know what you're doing. Where's the...
Yeah, we're going to make that a segment.
All right, that's pretty close, too.
What'd you hear there, Tom?
One is, Stewart went on and talked about once you grant people the right to object.
I thought you liked that.
Yes. And the first thing I'd say is, well, nobody grants you the right to object. You can either object or not object to something.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the question is, will they hear your objection or will they not? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what he means. I'm not entirely sure. But, of course, you have the right to object to anything, right? Your natural right, you have the ability to object. Why? Because it obligates no one to anything by objecting.
But isn't he saying what he's saying? Once you grant the person a right to object, in other words, you condone their objection, and you make a law that says that they can or can't.
Well, if I get it right, in this case, Obamacare has 20 main components.
Yep.
Okay, and apparently the Hobby Lobby case was essentially, I think, about one of the components.
I believe so.
And the point is,
Hobby Lobby, wasn't it Hobby Lobby's mandate that they had to pay for contraception?
yes, they had to pay for these 20 components in Obama as part of Obamacare.
And one of them is contraception.
And they said we don't want to pay for that part because we object to it based on religious grounds.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm obviously
fair enough. Knock yourself out, folks.
Okay,
right.
So the first thing is realize what this is in the first place. This is a mandate from the state that you must provide this to your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And my first question is, I don't understand. Why can't an employer rig any deal he wants with an employee?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why do I have to pay you dollars? Why can't I rig? Hey, will you cut my lawn for 3 cherries?
Right.
Actually, that's illegal unless you report the cherries as income. Right? We can't do that. That's absurd. That's the whole point. And I get it. The state wants the money, and Tom, you don't understand. Society won't. The state can't function without your money. Yeah, I like that idea too. By the way, because every service that I'm getting from the state and others are getting from the state, I believe they should actually pay for it. They should pay for what they're getting. And I know this backs up in the whole thing. Well, what if people can't pay for it? I'm citing the reason in most cases that they can't pay for it is because the state confiscated their wealth. So again, if you got rid of the state, they'd be able to afford, and they would be responsible for their own actions.
Or could we not say this a different way and say that if I didn't have to pay for all the stuff that you wanted and everybody else, but only what I wanted,
yes,
I could probably afford to do it.
You could probably afford to do a whole lot more than you can today.
Okay.
And there's more of a ripple effect. Again, when I make this analogy, people say, okay, but I get paid $50,000, I get to keep 35, whatever the number is. Okay, you're saying I'd get the whole 50. I'm like, you're going through this thought process in a vacuum. If there was no state, there'd be no corporate tax. If there was no corporate tax, profits would be higher. Well, you'd say, oh, great, you just want corporations to make more money. No, think about it. There would actually be a freer market in the labor pool. So in other words, they probably have to pay you more to get you. If you're a good employee over here and they want to bring you to another corporation, they're going to have to entice you with some kind of with a financial inducement, right? So you not only would you keep all your take-home pay, you would likely get paid more. You'd be better compensated, right? And ultimately, without all the regulations and all the things that are frivolous, have you not heard people saying, I got to just fill this paperwork out because it has to, for a government form, right? That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't be happening. All that money wouldn't be wasted. Again, profits would go higher. You say, great, those companies just make more money. Well, hopefully, they would make more money than they do today. And also, there'd probably be way more jobs in the United States. Because if the tax rate was 0, corporations would be coming here instead of leaving for a lower corporate tax rate.
Or buying a shelter company.
Absolutely.
Offshore.
Exactly. We've all heard, I think, seen the thing on Apple Computer has a lot of their receipts going to Ireland or something.
Medtronics and the company they're buying. And so they're trying to avoid the enormous amount of tax burden that they have to pay in the U.S.
Yes. So the point is, instead of an outflow of capital, there would be an inflow. So what would they need? They'd need more laborers. They need more workers, more management. Okay, there's a certain number of laborers and management personnel here. There'd be more takers. It'd be a more competitive market, right? You can't make these little things, in a vacuum. Like when we talked about public education earlier, people say, oh, good, no one will be educated because there won't be any money for the schools. If we went to a free society, there'd be a whole lot of things that would be different. And by the way, here comes Trigger. I believe that the state...
That's not his horse, by the way.
Yes, it is. That's my horse, Trigger. Come on in, Trigger! Anyway, so these things can't be thought of in a vacuum is the point.
Okay.
I want to get back to...
He had your word right in there, again, a bunch of times.
That was one of them.
Yep.
There's a chair in the dining room.
Which gets, I'm with you, and that's going to become my new pet peeve, is the way the word right is thrown about everywhere as an entitlement.
Yes, I have a right to free speech.
Yep.
I guess one of my favorites, so that's why I had to do it.
That's actually the one that you started me on, by the way.
Huh?
No, you don't.
Exactly.
Until it's against, you do until it's against the government. Then you don't.
But think about it. There isn't actually no such thing as a right to free speech, and I'm having fun with your play on word rights because people have rights to all kinds of things. If you actually had a right to free speech, that means you would not be able to restrict when I wanted to speak. In other words, and by that definition, like is used by Obamacare, that means I could show up at your bedroom at 3 a.m. and I'd be standing at the foot of your bed saying, I don't know, the sky is blue and the cloud, right? And you, whoa, dude, what are you doing here? I'm speaking, I'd say, right? I have a right to free speech.
You mean it's wrong when you do that with me?
Okay, this exception. He kind of likes that, but that's beside the point. Right? But so you'd have, if I truly had a right to free speech, you would be obligated to provide me a microphone, right? A place to speak, right? That you don't. You only have one set of rights. Property rights. We might have talked about those before on this show.
Sure.
But again, it's one of those things. I have a right to free speech. I have a right to health care. I have a right to an education. I have a right to a job, right? You've heard these things how many times and many more. Mm-hmm. There is no such right.
Right to equality.
Yes, I have a right to that. And I got news for you. None of us are equal. We're all different. That's the cool thing about us is we're all unique. Okay. The other thing they mentioned is they talked about favored individuals, right?
Yep.
That how do you? I can't remember where she was. She was talking about women and the religious groups or something. How they made them unequal. How do you make them equal? That's the whole point of what the state does. It provides favors to one group at the expense of another.
Specializing.
Yeah. Right. One of the financial crisis and the bailouts to the banks. I call that socializing the cost, privatizing the gain. Right? It's taking the money from everybody and giving it to those guys on the big banks on Wall Street. Mm-hmm. Which, this is the irony in people. A lot of people saw that, right? A lot of people objected to the bailouts to the banks. And they say, wait, they're taking our money. But why don't they object to these, I don't know if smaller issues is the right way to describe it, but these other issues? Mm-hmm. Then apparently it's more concealed and they don't see it, that it's socializing the cost and privatizing. You're creating a favored group, right? Mm-hmm. And part of the way that you can get away with it is, I used this analogy before, if Burger King, a hamburger chain, let's say, said, hey, we have a sale on our big hamburger, we'll call it the Dopper. It's not the Whopper, see, you get it? Anyway, and it's on sale for 99 cents. And you know, goes in the back of your mind and you're out traveling and you say, hey, I'm going to go get one of those big Doppers. And you go there and they actually charge you $1. Are you going to take them to court to fight them over this? And they say, hey, no, it's not 99 cents, it's $1. No, I saw the advertisement.
I had the right.
Exactly. But the whole point is you're not going to fight over the penny, likely. You're just going to go, you guys are a bunch of idiots, and that's going to be that. Well, that's exactly what the state does. They take a small amount for each one of these issues from a whole lot of people that they go, it's not worth fighting this whole deal. Well, there's some guys on Wall Street that are benefiting massively from this, right? That 3 cents from you, multiply it by 330 million people, that's a big chunk of change.
Sure it is.
So that's what they do. They concentrate wealth to their favorites. That's another objection, and people think, well, if you advocate for the free market, no regulation, right? No involvement by the state. Well, then these fat cats are just going to run wild and roughshod. What actually will happen likely is the opposite of that. There won't be this giant concentration of wealth. That's what creates the concentration of wealth. It's the favoritism to the few that are in the in crowd versus the majority that are on the outside. And they don't see what's happening here.
Right.
So favored individuals. I thought we should probably jump to the very last segment. This is only about 30 seconds.
Don't take away his one really good part about.
Sorry, go.
No, I think it's in the next set. What time are we?
I was going 14:37 to 15:15.
Okay, from 11. Where are we?
We went
Where
from.
do we end?
We just 8 to 1225 is what we
Okay,
just did.
can we pick up from 1225?
Sure.
Because this is a big section of what he says that I think crystallizes liberty, and your thing about compensation.
Manager.
I could have tried to be someone I'm not.
Yeah, so we got a little.
What are we going to buy this time?
Let's see. I think I killed the sound, so we're actually still on the air, and I got the ad going. See, I tricked them.
You are awesome.
I think it looks like it's going, but no sound. So
I just wanted to everybody hear what Jon Stewart kind of concludes is one of the.
Okay, so you want to go from where we left off for how long, roughly? Do you know?
What's the total, Tom?
It goes to 16 something, but
I think there was a break at this. So, and then it'll be my commentary will be brief.
You signal me
I will.
when you want to go. It's going to be here. It should be a little bit, and we'll be ready to go. I got to remember to turn the sound back on though, see, because that'll probably be helpful. It's still this commercial. Oh, it's a commercial. This Hercules.
Sure, let's go see it tonight.
Not till Friday.
Not till Friday.
See, that's why Trigger's here.
For this Religious Freedom Restoration Act that was signed in 1993 is the idea that because that was implemented, there really are now a religious exemption. I guess for me, it's not even the individual. It's suddenly applying that right to a corporation is stunning to me. That when you go to work for a corporation, you now own all of their belief system that they want you to own, but with none of the recourse. They don't have any of the responsibility, but they get all the protections.
Right, and this case is extraordinary in many ways, but the single most extraordinary way is that they read RFRA, which has the word persons in it,
right,
to include not just corporations, right? This isn't the Little Sisters. This isn't Wheaton College. This is a for-profit corporation that sells scrapbooking materials. They're persons for this statute, and that's very dramatic. But the thing that you're saying that is so right and that I think falls out of the conversation...
Let's hear this.
This sentence my husband has never heard, by the way. You're
I'm
so
excited.
right about
I'm
something.
excited.
But what falls out of the case and what's really scary is this is framed as a case that's about Hobby Lobby's rights against the government's rights.
Right.
But there are these third parties. They have 15,000 employees who do not share their religious beliefs, and the court has never held that your religious conscience can trump the rights of third parties who almost fall out of the case and are not even talked about.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how corporations then expand whatever their rights are. I would not be surprised to see Hobby Lobby get a chance to open carry. You know, you're going to see stores now with giant rifles on top of them, scaring people. What do you think is there anything down the pike coming that you look at and go, that will be the next crucial test of these principles?
Yeah, because there's a whole bunch of cases that got kicked back to the courts of appeals, including, you know, an Eden Foods case. There's a whole bunch that the court said, wait while this is pending. And so those are all going to come back.
Does this put the onus on the government now in a pick and choose term? If I'm a conscientious objector against the Iraq war, do I then say none of my employees or myself have to pay taxes during that period because I don't want my money used conscientiously to bomb Iraq?
It goes back to the same.
Okay. All right. So in that there's a lot, but he talks about exemptions, and he talks about the right of a corporation to mandate their beliefs to their employees.
Yeah, they're not mandating their beliefs, right? They got
or imposing.
Right. And he's saying that because they sought relief from the court and got it, right? That's why he's saying that. But of course, the deal is they were mandated to provide essentially these 20 things, right?
Hypocrisy.
Yeah. And they actually got exempted from one of them. So now they're only mandated to provide 19 things. And again, back to the point I made earlier is, why should they be mandated to provide anything for their employees? Why don't they just work it out between employer and employee voluntarily?
And you would advocate in a free society, as a corporation, if it's your corporation, it's a private corporation, they should be able to do whatever they want.
Yeah, you work out any deal with your employees.
Right? If this is they don't like wearing the corporate uniform that's green pants and blue shirts, then Sorry,
If I'm
this isn't the place for you.
If I'm the owner of the corporation and Brad is the most valued employee and he makes a fantastic contribution and he comes forward and says, Tom, I don't want to wear the uniform anymore, I have to stop and probably weigh a number of things, but I'm going to simplify here. It's like, okay, if Brad doesn't wear his uniform, I might be looking at others saying, well, Brad doesn't have to wear the uniform, so right? So I might lose uniforms. But if I say, no, Brad, you have to wear the uniform, I might risk losing you as an employee. I have to make that evaluation. Now, what battle do I want to fight here? Is it worth it for me to go one way or the other, right? Where's the value? So the point is, can I just make an exception for Brad? Of course I can, but I'm likely going to fight another battle with people saying, hey, I don't want to wear the uniform either. But you could work it out individually if you want. I would assume that a lot of corporations would create a policy just so they wouldn't have to do it. But they also have to understand, and most of them don't think of this, they're going to lose some employees because of that. Because now I'm getting, here's my one-size-fits-all benefit package.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some people aren't going to like it, and they're going to go elsewhere.
And, I mean, in this instance, if I am extreme pro-choice, I doubt that I'm going to make Hobby Lobby high on my priority list of where I want to go to work.
Exactly. And if you are already there,
yep.
Right? And apparently the deal was they were supplying this with their health coverage prior to Obamacare.
I should amend that. And that's important to me.
Right.
Right?
Okay. So
and that's a deal breaker to me in my life.
Right. So now it's time for you to start looking around because it's a voluntary association. If it's a big enough deal, if it again is a deal breaker,
yep.
You're looking. Right? Which is fine. And Hobby Lobby's going to have to live with that and go, hey, I could be losing my ace employee here over this deal. And one way to remedy it is, as an employer, if you want to now, again, putting it in the political arena to save face, right? I don't actually want to pay for this because I got a Supreme Court decision in my favor, and I can't turn around and now start supplying it, right? So what I do is, and you come to me, Brad, say, I'm going to resign because you're not supplying this for me. I can say, Brad, here's the deal. I'm going to front you a couple more bucks, and you could just pay for it out of pocket. So essentially, I'm paying for it, but it's not through the health care plan. There's 1,000 things they could do, but okay.
So then they go, John says, is this not basically setting the stage for Hobby Lobby rights, there's their word again, versus government rights? As to what they dictate and what they mandate.
That's a beautiful thing in my world.
Indeed. I thought you'd like that.
That's what they were talking. Was this a segment where they said, well, there's actually some guys who have objected to all 20 components?
Yeah.
Did they get to that?
So then he goes even further and he says, is this not setting the stage for people to potentially have the right to object against virtually anything during a given period of time that the government does?
Yes.
Ding, ding, ding.
I think it's a great
Sound
thing.
the alarm.
And here, by the way, I do object to every last thing that the state does. I object to it.
And he uses the example of if I object against the Iraq war, then I'm not going to pay taxes during the period of that time.
Right. And he sees that as problematic. And if I remember right, Dahlia sees this as very problematic. I see that as perfect. Here, what we said earlier in the show, why don't you just pay for the goods and services that you want? That's what that would result in.
And I'll never forget one of our first discussions that you and I had, Tom, was do I go along with every single thing that the government does? Well, of course not. The things that they make laws that I disagree with, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's my opinion. You have your opinion.
Yes.
And so when it comes to taxes, you always said, well, what if you just had an a la carte menu?
Right.
And you got a thing at the end of the month or at the end of the year, and you said, hey, what are the things that you want to support next year or participate in next year?
And here's what they would cost.
You'd have a huge shift in policy.
Yeah, I got a feeling the warfare state, for one, would be a whole lot smaller.
Right.
Right? People go, what? That much money? Are you crazy?
We're 20 after. If you want to get in one more point.
I don't want to get any more points in. I'm good.
You're good.
I think we're fine on that. I think we made the point. We'll put it up on the Facebook page.
It's up. I put it up there.
Oh, awesome. That's way to. And again, at the beginning of the the show, we said we're a long-form conversation.
Yep.
And then, of course, we joked about how we're going to chop this up. And whenever you cut something up, you take it out of context. So the reason we put it up on the Facebook page is, if you have interest, listen to the whole thing from start to finish, and then partly you can analyze whether we did a fair job
Absolutely.
of cutting this up.
Yep.
If not, give us some comments on the Facebook page.
And I can assure you that we took it in its sequential form.
Yes, we went chronologically.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't really have much more.
Give us a wrap-up.
What's the wrap-up? The wrap-up is always... Really, I could do the same wrap-up for every show.
Knock yourself out.
You know, the state of society is not about what I want and that I get to vote for what I want. It's actually imposing my wishes on others. That's the part that people don't see, I think, very well.
Might makes right.
Right, exactly. In a free society, I would not be able, there would be no mechanism available to me to impose my will on another. That's what freedom is about. And I don't understand, I know a lot of people are uncomfortable. I know one of Dahlia's comments was something in the order of that, like society cannot function without force or something like that. I'm misphrasing it here, but she made some allusion, which I think really shows a person's stripes. Of course, not only would I argue that society could function without the use of force, my argument is society would function much better without the use of aggressive force. Again, you have to ask yourself the basic question: under what circumstance would the use of aggressive force be justified? Let me explain aggressive force to people. When would it be proper? When would it be justifiable for someone to use force against an innocent person? Okay, I happen to fall on the side that the answer is never. If that's the case, use that as an analysis tool for this interview and all the other stuff that you hear on all the fancy shows that get a lot of ratings, that a little better than our rating spread. But I think that's a good analysis tool, because that's inevitably, when you're engaging in tyrannical behavior, you're sanctioning the use of aggressive force, the use of force against an innocent person. And again, I think most people don't think they're doing it. So I'm saying think that through when you have those kind of positions.
Absolutely.
With that...
Are you going to take us out with some good music?
I'm going to take us out with, we'll just say John's song, because I know I don't have his...
Hey, this could be our cliffhanger for next week. We could have his actual real name.
Yeah, we got
people want to listen to
get. And this is how I started.
Fired up, Holmes!
Fired up, Holmes. All right, here we go. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. We appreciate you being with us. Give us some comments on the Facebook page.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next Tuesday. Actually, we won't see you. We'll hear you, or you'll hear us. Or
check
whatever.
us out, and thanks for listening.
Here we go. River Jordan.
Gonna take it down to Jordan where the current runs lean. The river runs dirty, some things are never clean. There's a man in a camel skin on a bank outside of town. He baptizes some while others sink drown. God blesses some more than others, I hear. But I ain't never seen him in his long gray beard. Some call murder, others call suicide. Some think it righteous when it flows a crimson tide. God bless the soldiers, every day they stay alive. Some think it holy if in his name they die. Boys, let me tell you that when cousins start to fight, an eye for an eye gets sanctified. Brother John's still out there on that river out of town. Can't you hear him screaming? The warrior wears a crown. He cries out across the ages in the same hoarse voice. Lone standing sentinel with a solitary choice. His flock spills a source that we all hold dear. But I ain't never seen blood make a river run clear. Gonna take it down the Jordan where the current runs lean. The river runs dirty, some things are never clean. There's a man in a camel skin on a bank outside of town.